Keats was an English poet born in 1795. He suffered from tuberculosis, and after both his brother and father had just died from it. John Keats was not a ladies' man. He didn't like women. He believed they were contemptuous and was never comfortable talking to them. He even stated once, "The opinion I have of the generality of women who appear to me as children, to whom I would rather give a sugar plum than my time, form a barrier against matrimony which I rejoice in." This pretty much means, women aren't worth my time, nor is marriage. However, John Keats wrote many of his poems about a beautiful young lady who stole his heart. In 1818, his feelings towards women changed drastically when he moved to Hampstead and met his lovely new neighbor, Frances Fanny Brawne. He quickly falls in love and they get engaged before the end of the year. Sadly, their entire relationship was kept a secret from almost everyone, excluding their closest friends. John was not financially established and had dropped out of medical school to become a poet. Keats desperately wanted to marry Fanny, but soon realized that his tuberculosis was going to kill him, and marriage would never come. Through the pain of tuberculosis and the joys of love, he wrote poetry about his beloved Fanny. In the poem Bright Stars, Keats personifies a star, an unmoving, unchangeable object, something steadfast. He tells the star how he doesn't want to be like it because the star is lonely, but then again how he does want to be like the star in a sense that the star never changes or moves or dies. He never wants to be away from the position of his head lying on his woman's breast, awake forever. He wants to stay there for all eternity, hearing her breath. He also says that if he can't, he would rather die. Keats uses the simile, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, to show that the star's patient doesn't sleep and is a hermit, which is how the star watches. Then Keats introduces a metaphorical mask to produce imagery of the snow covering the mountains and the moors. Through this imagery, the reader is painted a vivid picture of steady stars bright over snow-covered mountains. Keats returns to the first line by stating that it is still steadfast, still unchanging. Nothing will ever change the star. Nothing will get the star down, just like tuberculosis has Keats down. This shows how he desires to be like the star, dependable. In the end, it shows how he would rather be here with his love than amongst the stars. He compares the immortality of the bright star to the mortality of human life. Keats' tuberculosis was getting worse, and his doctor told him he needed to move to Italy to improve his health. Before he left, he wrote another poem to Fanny, La Belle Dame Sans Merci, a ballad. Keats writes in a ballad form, quatrains in alternating iambic tetrameter and tetrameter lines. The poem is spoken between two different people, an unnamed speaker who questions a sick, sad knight. It tells the story of how a knight sees a beautiful young lady and falls in love, but it's a trap. Keats uses unique language, repetition, and the absence of details to create a ballad-like mood. The language gives off the feel of an autumn state and moves into a cold, wintry landscape with an erotic, beautiful, and deadly woman. This imagery, along with all the different flowers described throughout the poem, really brings the poem to life. Lilies and roses with bracelets and garlands, so full of aroma. This is also a metaphor for love. The water and dew can represent a woman, and the withering away of Keats' soul to his tuberculosis, and as well as to Fanny. Keats uses the repetition of the line, "The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing," at the beginning and end of the poem to seal the knight's unfortunate fate. This poem represents the pains of losing your freedom once you have fallen in love. After finishing this poem, Keats moved to Italy to spend the winter. Before he left, he saw Fanny one last time in September of 1820 and later died there. Fanny mourned for 6 years and got married to Louis Linden in 1833. They had 2 sons and a daughter. In 1865, she passed away. But before she did, she told her children about Mr. John Keats and showed them the relics of their past. In 1872, Fanny's husband died, and their children looked to sell their mother's relics, and that's when John's letters to Fanny became published, and their love was known by all. These poems and letters live on today to show the love and pain Keats endured for the 3 years battling tuberculosis and falling in love with Fanny. It shows how a person can go from hating women with all their soul to giving it up for one. How love can alter a person, body and mind, and how death, believe it or not, can actually be scarier than a woman.